He kōna ipurangi tēnei nā te reo irirangi o Aotearoa.
Hi and welcome to Eating Fried Chicken in the Shower bonus episode. I'm here with clinical psychologist Sarb Johal.
Kia ora, James.
Sarb, I want to talk to you about an experience I had coming out of level 3 into level 2 because I had something sort of sneak up on me. I think like a lot of people was like, woohoo, I can go for a walk. I can get into the town. I can go to the sea. And I was walking through the city centre of a pretty empty Wellington, and the opposite actually started to happen to me. I didn't feel like, I'm finally out and about. I actually began to feel quite anxious and get quite panicky. Is that a normal feeling?
Yeah, I think it was actually quite a common feeling. I think a lot of people were experiencing something quite similar. And I think if we think about the paradox of actually going into level 4 was the most restrictive in terms of freedom, but in terms of the psychological safety that it offered.
Yeah.
You know, the fact that you were in your bubble and you were carefully controlling who it was that you were exposed to, and your exposure then to any kind of possible infection with the coronavirus, then to move from that kind of maximum psychological safety and security to something that was a bit loose, even though we were fairly confident, pretty confident that it wasn't out there, and we were testing this out. There is, coming along with that, easing of restrictions then is a slightly reduced feeling of psychological safety. It's also moving after 4 weeks into somewhere where we may have been used to being, but we're not used to being around anymore. And plus, you know, you're moving around in this space where you're used to seeing lots of people, and then suddenly you're seeing nobody else around you.
Yeah.
There's lots of cues there for people, for you to be thinking and feeling, this doesn't feel quite right. Do you know what I mean?
Is it an overstimulation, like going from like not much stimulation to suddenly lots of things happening around you?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends what was going on in your bubble, right? So if you had a bubble where you had like quite a few people at home living with you at that time, then yeah, it may have been going from the opposite, you know, lots of things going on in a very small enclosed space to suddenly being outside and nobody else around you, or people being very wary about how it was that they were being around other people. Alternatively, you could have been alone completely during those 4 weeks and then moving into a space where suddenly there's a queue for somewhere to go for coffee. And even though people are being spaced apart, it's a novel new experience for you. So people were experiencing this kind of FOGO, this kind of fear of going out.
Yeah.
And it was kind of difficult for people to enter back into a public space again.
I just want to ask you about another fear along those lines, the fear of the unknown, because I think that's a saying, we all know it, we've heard it, but we've been hearing it a lot moving forward into level 1 and sort of the continuing holding of level 1. But what actually is fear of the unknown?
So there's a couple of things there that are unknown if we think about breaking it down. Number one is sort of like the unpredictability. We don't know how this is going to unfold over time. Okay,
right.
We like to think that we've got a grip on it, and if anything does break out, then we're going to be able to manage that. So there's the unpredictability in terms of time, but then there's also the uncertainty of what is going to happen next. And I guess we as a nation, as a country, are a bit of an outlier on the world stage. So what's our place in the world now?
Yeah.
What's our experience going to be like compared to other people's experience in the world? You know, if I check out my social media timeline, I'm feeling increasingly kind of divorced from the reality of other people's lived experience compared to my lived experience. Even though I have relatives, many relatives all overseas, I'm just feeling quite removed from that right now. That's the unknown, I guess.
And does that play into, for myself, when I talk to friends overseas, family overseas, I kind of almost have to censor the information I give them, you know, like, oh, sorry, I'm just been to a restaurant. Like, I'm doing a live gig in front of, you know, a couple of hundred. It is that kind of thing where that Kiwiness of don't brag, mate. Everything you do when your country's like New Zealanders compared to the rest of the world feels a bit like bragging. what does that do to our social communication, to our sense of who we are?
You're right. I mean, I guess we do need to be careful, and what you're picking up there is, we need to be respectful of other people's experience and what they may be going through right now.
See, I'm not used to being respectful. That's probably the issue there.
But I think this is coming up for a lot of people at the moment, is how do we talk about our experience when it may be very difficult for people to relate to us and for us to relate to their experience. And as we travel along these sort of like parallel paths, and there may be other nations who kind of join us in similar status in terms of being relatively COVID-free, and long may it continue, but also, what is the experience of the other countries in the world who are still going to be grappling with this for a long time. So we're going to be in this kind of perilous situation, I think, where we're going to have to try to figure out our place in the world and how it is that we remain in contact with each other in respectful and meaningful ways, and really understanding each other's experience.
What are the mental pitfalls we need to look out for as we move forward into that?
Yeah. So one of the things is that with this sort of uncertainty and unpredictability, it's difficult to kind of develop a language for what it is that we might be scared of. Partly because we can't necessarily put our finger on it, and partly because if we do put our finger on it, if we do name it, the peril, the danger is that it feels more real.
Absolutely.
And we actually might be more comfortable with not naming it and leaving it unspoken, because that's preferable to making it real and actually talking about it. And I think that this is going to be a really big challenge for us, because our biggest challenge in New Zealand is not the presence of COVID-19, it's the absence of COVID-19. And that's completely different and presents different challenges to what other people are facing in the rest of the world.
Are the things we need to keep in mind for our mental health, being in that such a different space? Because we're still getting international news channels, we're still getting, Twitter, Facebook, all that. There's still this international information coming to us, which isn't necessarily relative to our experience. So are there the things we need to keep in mind for our own mental health moving forward?
Yeah, I think if we think back to perhaps our experiences when we went through the lockdown, level 4 lockdown, level 3 of lockdown, and when we were living these kind of slimmed down lives, we weren't able to go out as much as we were before. We could stay local and do all those things. But I think lots of people started experiencing what was really important in their lives. And I think one of those things was, people would be absolutely worried about businesses and worried about income, but they were also, I think they had a realization of things like relationships became really, really important for them. And doing things that were in alignment with their values became really, really important for them. And I think we know this from research that we've done with people going through disasters, is they have almost like a reorientation as to actually, what's important in my life? What are the things that make me happy? What are the things that enable me to function well? And how do I take that forward with me to help me to meet the challenges of what's coming next? The big challenge is that we don't really know what's coming next. So then it becomes really important to stay in touch with those values and practices that keep us on an even keel as we try to navigate these kind of uncharted waters that we're going to be sailing through.
Thank you very much, clinical psychologist Sarb Johal.
Kia ora, James.
Kia ora, brother.